Education exchange is really a foundation in how we understand the other side. It's most important when the two countries, the US and China, are not getting along. Around a decade ago, there were 15,000 Americans studying in China. And fast forward to today, there are about 2,000 on the ground. A decade ago, we saw trend lines increasing for Chinese students coming here year on year. Now, since 2019, we've seen a one-third decrease in Chinese students coming to the United States. The risk of not getting firsthand exposure could lead to misperceptions or, at worst, misunderstandings that could lead to escalation down the road.
Why is educational exchange between the US and China important?
The educational exchange issue is so important because it really is the primary way that we can better get to know each other, even when we don't agree. I think there's been a conflation on both sides that if you maybe go to the other person's country, if you're an American who spends time in China or Chinese who comes here, that means you have to agree or that you're supporting everything about the other system. I think that's completely false. The way in which you go to a place, hopefully open-minded with maybe some of your own preconceived notions, but willingness to hear and engage with other people, that's an important part of being a global citizen, of being a informed scholar or researcher or student, and a really crucial way that we can learn more about other people who share the globe with us. And I think that education exchange has been this really important vehicle for getting Americans and Chinese into contact, meeting each other, building common ground, and finding ways to engage, even when we don't agree politically, especially at this moment when there has been a real kind of decrease in connectivity. Just there's fewer ways that both sides, students, scholars, and academics and specialists in both countries get a chance to meet each other, fewer flights, fewer programs that brings the two sides together, fewer opportunities for study abroad or for travel. I think that we need to really think critically about how educational exchange is an important way that we can strengthen our understanding of the other side, get to know each other, and find those opportunities for connectivity.
What current challenges and opportunities are people who are pursuing US China educational exchange facing?
The challenges there are quite a lot. I won't step around that point. In the US side, at least, there's a lot more restrictions on university campuses, and state legislators, national legislation on how and why we interact with China on campuses. So some of that is in response to real issues that have been experienced on American campuses around freedom of expression issues and transnational repression. But a lot of that also gets in the way of non-sensitive, non-complicated research, like, study abroad programs, for example, language programs, for example. So on the American side, I think on most campuses, most Americans would find it much more challenging to understand how they can get to China. So that's, I think, one really important impediment to education exchange right now. But on the other side, it is a more restrictive academic environment in China. China has changed in some ways how they administer university programs, how they handle foreign exchange with Americans, and there's more restriction bureaucracy on that side as well. So both sides are kind of mirroring each other in how they are restricting and putting more hurdles in the way of education exchange. I think that often leaves students in the crosshairs because it's very difficult to navigate some of those policies. But that said, the opportunities are still there for those who on the US side who want to take the chance and go to China. I think you'll find a very interesting and creative place where there's a lot going on, from technological developments to climate change policy, global issues. A lot is happening there on the ground that students and scholars get a chance to witness firsthand. And for Chinese who still come here, I know that there's a lot of news and perceptions of America that it's a dangerous place. There's a lot of negative media about this current state of American society. Many Chinese students who come here find welcoming Americans who want to show them the, diversity and richness and nuances of this country too. So I think the challenge also poses an opportunity to both sides to take that leap. If you are curious about studying abroad or to spend time in the other country, to try to go ahead and do so and find those opportunities to find people who share the same values as you.
What role does the nonprofit sector play in the US China relationship?
The nonprofit sector is a really important stabilizing force in the bilateral relationship. Over the past decade or so, we've seen an enormous shift in US China policy from the nation to nation level. But amid that, of course, I think as we know, anybody who's tuning in, the relationship between the United States and China is much more complex and nuanced and deep and diverse than just the policies of the two governments. So nonprofits represent this really important sense of stability and connectivity, both people to people levels, experts on both sides working together on a shared cause, and a sense of common purpose and goal, issues where the United States and China still share a lot of interests and have a lot of topics where they need to cooperate or find at least ways to understand what each other is doing to be able to manage bilateral ties or global issues. So right now, I will say it's not an easy time to be working in U.S.-China relations in any sector, and I think the nonprofit sector is also a part of that. Here at the U.S.-China Education Trust, we're working on higher education issues and ensuring a pipeline of expertise of Americans who deeply understand China and Chinese who understand the United States. And we've been doing this work for 25 years, but this is a really tough moment for that expertise pipeline on both sides. On the US student side, the numbers are quite low of Americans who are going to get firsthand exposure in China. And at USET, we believe that firsthand exposure is a crucial part of how we understand a complicated and nuanced and diverse country like China. So we would love to see those numbers go up. And on the other side, with Chinese students coming to the United States, the numbers in total are still higher, but the trends are not looking good. The numbers are down roughly one-third from before the pandemic. And we see a continual decrease trend line number of Chinese students who are choosing the United States as their preferred place to study. So I think we see organizations like us in the nonprofit sector and the academic environment who are working to try to build bridges and find ways for connectivity between the two sides, increasingly under strain, but also more important than ever in this political moment to make sure that there are still ways we can understand each other despite maybe not seeing eye to eye on every issue.
What advice do you have for young people aspiring to work in the US China relations field?
I'm so happy when I meet young people who are really excited about a career in this field. There's so many ways to get involved in US-China relations. And I think that there's maybe a misperception that you can only do US-China policy working for a government or at a think tank where you're writing policy analysis. And I want to let any young professional who's interested in this career know that it's completely not true. There's so much happening between the two countries on all different levels of the relationship. So whether that might be a role at a nonprofit like the U.S. China Education Trust, where we work on issues in U.S. China relations essentially through the lens of education. We have if you care about education, if you care about U.S. China, come join us. We have internships and roles open, so come you can contribute that way. Organizations like the National Committee, where you can work on the range of issues in bilateral affairs in a nonprofit setting. And businesses, of course, are a huge way in which the two countries continue to interact. Essentially, any sector you can think of, there's ways to think about an international impact, a US-China impact. And if you're interested in a job in the field, I think my biggest advice is to just be creative and open-minded about what that might look like. It might not be writing a policy paper, but if you're working side by side with colleagues in your China office or you're sitting in the China office working side by side with colleagues in your American office, that's U.S.-China relations. And that's important experience and nuance and cultural understanding that you can bring into your next role, wherever that might take you into the field. So I think keeping an open mind about what careers in this field look like is a really important piece of advice.